Hi, I'm Dr. Alistair Ping. I'm the founder of the Sacred Path School, and welcome to this little course on Introduction to Existentialism. So just let me share the screen and we'll get underway. Okay, so I want to start this off by just telling you a little story. You may have come across this story before. This is the story of the frog and the scorpion. It's a Buddhist story. So the frog and the scorpion meet each other on the side of the river. And the scorpion says to the frog, "Can you get me a ride to the other side?" And the frog says, "If I do that, you'll sting me." And the scorpion says, "Don't be ridiculous. If I sting you, we'll both die." And the frog says, "Fair enough, jump on, I'll give you a ride." Anyway, they get about halfway across the river and the frog feels the spike in his back and he turns to the scorpion. He says, "Did you just sting me?" And the scorpion goes, "Yes." And the frog says, "Why did you do that? Now we're both going to die." And the scorpion says, "No, it's in my nature. There's nothing I can do about it." So the first question you need to ask with regard to change and walking a sacred path through life is, what is your belief on the balance between free will versus destiny? So if you believe in destiny, fate, etc., then everything is already predetermined, and most of your efforts, if you like, to sort of improve yourself or improve your life will basically be workarounds. If, however, you believe in complete free will, obviously you can create things as they go along. Most of us sort of meet somewhere in the middle, so some of it's predetermined, some of it's free will. But in walking this path, one of the first questions you need to ask is, what is your belief on the balance between free will and destiny? Because it will affect how you respond to various efforts, I suppose, to sort of change your life and, as I said, walk a sacred path. So what I'm interested in these two questions. So what's the nature of existence and how am I creating my reality? And if we back up a little bit, when you talk about philosophy, so philosophy is essentially an inquiry into the nature of reality. So the first question that you can ask is, okay, is it real or is it all just an illusion? Like, for example, the Matrix movies. Now, most of us get to the point where we come to the conclusion that it is actually real. And then the next question you can ask are these ones. So what's the nature of existence? And if you can understand the nature of existence, then you want to know, okay, how am I creating my reality? Because if you can understand how you're creating your reality, then you can tweak it and do something about it. And that's the field of existentialism. So with regard to existentialism, the key relationship is between being and time. So it's not rocket science. We exist in these three realms, past, present, future. And most of us can think back, say 5, 10 years ago, and we can see how our state of being has changed over a period of time. And it's easy these days, like if most of us are working, if you're an executive or something like that, most of us are using executive calendars or electronic calendars. And you can go back through your electronic calendar and you can see how you're actually spending your time. And that'll give you a good indication as to what you're actually creating in your life. Now, the way this works is we begin pretty much as a blank sheet. So if you think about kids, if you've got kids, and then essentially what happens is you have a variety of experiences and your parents and significant others teach you about what's right and wrong. You get a little bit older and you form opinions and judgments about things, especially as you become a teenager. And then critically, you learn two key stories. So the first story is how the world works. So this tends to be like a sort of big picture paradigm. Tends to be quite sort of culturally based. So you probably gather from my surname that I'm part Chinese. I was brought up with quite a Chinese view on the world. So the Chinese view on the world is essentially that the world is a competitive place. And if you want to be successful, you need to work, study, and effectively claw your way to the top. Other cultures will teach you most important thing is community, family, land, etc. But whatever it is, you will have a story in your head around how the world works. And again, it's worthwhile taking some time to uncover what that story is. The second story you learn is who you are. So if you think about, go back to kids again, if you think about kids, you talk to kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Possibilities are out here, endless possibility. I want to be a rocket scientist, prime minister, ballet dancer, actor, whatever. And what happens as you get older is that those stories start to narrow down, basically as other people tell you what you're good at and what you're not good at. And generally what happens is you get to around about high school age, and you've got a pretty good idea of what you're good at and what you're not good at, and you develop what's called a winning strategy. So you work out what's best for you to get what you want. And if you think about those high school years, so generally going into high school, kids are kind of separated out into the sporting kids, the academic kids, etc., etc. If you want to uncover what your winning strategy is, if you think about when you're going into a meeting for the first time, think about what are you listening for and how are you trying to contribute, and that'll give you an idea of what your winning strategy is. Now, all of these things form what's called your fixed view of the world. And then what happens when you face something new, your brain looks backwards to all of these things. So in other words, you go from the present back to the past, and then you bring that back into the present again. And this is very aligned to what we know from neurocognitive science. So if you look at Daniel Kahneman's work, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, basically the way we make decisions, we've got two decision-making processes. The first is a subconscious pattern matching process, and the second one is higher order conscious reasoning. So this is the subconscious pattern matching process. So, excuse me. So when you come across something, so you're watching this, your supercomputer brain is rifling back through all of the things that you've experienced before, and you're trying to work out how what you're hearing now fits in with what you already know. So you're looking for what's called a basis of relatedness between what you're hearing now and what you already know, so you can make sense of it. If you can't find a basis of relatedness, you basically think, oh, this is complete gobbledygook, and you dismiss it. If you think about this in like a workplace situation or even in relationships, so you're in the present, somebody comes to you with an issue. As they're talking to you, as I said, your brain is rifling back through thinking, what have I heard that's like this? What have I experienced that's like this? And what should I do in that situation? And maybe you've experienced 3 or 4 situations that are quite similar. And what you do is you think, okay, which was the best one? Maybe 7 out of 10, something like that. So you take it from the past and you bring it back into the present. Now, it's not all bad because it allows you to do continuous improvement. So this is the continuous improvement feedback loop. So if you think about things that you do over and over and over again, you basically try and get better and better and better at it. The problem is that most of us are going round and round this loop about 90–95% of the time. By definition, it's a reactive loop. So you react to events rather than choose. If you're happy with the way things are going in your life and you're living in a stable linear environment where you can accurately predict forwards, keep doing the same thing. Problem is that most of us are now living in a pretty complex, changing, volatile, uncertain environment. And this loop of going round and round and round will basically just cause you more and more frustration. So if you want to change something in your life, if you want to create something new, you need to get into this loop. So you need to get into the future present loop. And as you can see there, most of us are only doing that about sort of 5 to 10% of the time. And generally we're only doing it out of a reaction or a dissatisfaction, if you like, for what we've been creating. So you go, bugger it, I'm going to try something completely different. And as you can see, it's a proactive creative loop. Future is blank canvas, true possibility, hasn't been written yet. The problem with this is that your new aspirations can create internal conflict. Okay, so if you go back to what I was saying before, if you have a story over here about who you are, so maybe you have a story over here that you're a introverted person who's good at detail, but you have an aspiration over here that you would like to step up to a leadership position or do something more creative or I suppose outgoing in your life. So you basically G up the courage, you go, right, I'm going to do it, come on, come on, come on. And then what happens is the first time something goes wrong, so the first time you have a setback, this aspect of yourself over there will basically say to yourself, hey, told you so. What did you think you were doing? Basically stepping out of the box. You need to actually give up on that aspiration and come back. So as I said, you have this internal conflict that goes on between the part of yourself over here that's quite comfortable doing what it's always been doing. It's basically pattern matching, right? And the part of yourself over here that wants to create some sort of new reality. Now, if you think about these two loops in a bit more detail, this loop over here, as you can see, this is safe. So you've done it over and over again. As I said, you're basically defaulting into pattern matching, brain's going into autopilot, et cetera, et cetera. This loop over here, the present future loop, that's risky. That's stepping out of your comfort zone. That's sticking your head up out of the sand, for example. This loop over here, the past present loop, it's evidence-based. You can go back through, for example, if you have a situation where, you have numerous situations where public speaking freaks you out. You get nervous, your voice goes shaky, you get sweaty, whatever, right? And you have an aspiration over here that you'd like to get up and be a powerful public speaker, as soon as you have an issue, you pattern match against all this past stuff. And as I said, this part of yourself can draw on all the evidence. You can say, well, remember all of the times when this has been a complete disaster. Over here, future present loop, there's no direct evidence you can actually do that. So if you've had instances in the past where, as I said, you've had trouble standing up and talking in front of people, there's no direct evidence that you can do that really powerfully. On the left-hand side, past present loop, logical, rational thinking will hold you there, right? So your brain, as I said, logically and rationally go back through the evidence and present you a case, as I said, with evidence to prove to you that you should give up on your dream and just basically go back to what you've always done. Now, if you think about it, if you want to get into this future present loop, often what happens is you try and use your rational mind to justify why you should be doing that. But as I said, the evidence from a rational perspective is on the left-hand side. So if you want to get into this future present loop, basically what you need is will, right? So you need to strengthen your will. You need to find the courage to be able to step out of the comfort zone and step up to the plate and do something really gutsy. If you stay in this loop, often what happens is, well, let me back up. So I would say to you that we all start off life with grand aspirations and dreams over here, but life can be quite cruel in some instances, harsh, whatever you want to call it. We can get slapped down, and often what happens is people give up on their dreams and basically spend most of their time going round and around this loop and effectively mark out their territory here and defend their territory. If you want to, let me just go back to that for a sec, sorry. Oh, hang on a sec, sorry, I stuffed that up. Let me go back. Hang on, I'm fixing it. Just a moment. Yeah, so if you want to get into this loop, as I said, your key activity really is about strengthening the will. And the critical question is why, which I'll go through in a sec. Let's just keep going. Now, if you want to get into this future present loop, as I said, most of us are basically getting into that loop by geeing ourselves up and saying, come on, you can do it. And basically, firing it through, pushing ourselves, if you like. But what I would suggest to you is that if you want to change, you actually need some new anchor points, because if you keep pattern matching against all the past stuff, right, part of you, you're fighting against that part of yourself. So the new anchor points, 3 key questions, okay? What am I trying to create? How am I going to create it? And what will guide me in terms of values? And if you think about this in terms of, corporate speak, basically it's vision, mission, values. But as I said, the key question to ask is why? Okay, why do you actually want that? And remember that what your brain wants to do is default into pattern matching. So your brain wants to go into autopilot, wants to keep doing the same thing over and over again. If you want your brain to switch to the other decision-making mode, which is higher order conscious reasoning, this is higher order conscious reasoning going around this, what your brain wants to know is why? Why should I do it? Why? And it's here I would direct you to the work of Simon Sinek's very good on this. He talks about you should ask why 5 times. So you say, why do you want that? Okay, why do you want that? Why do you want that? Why do you want that? And remembering what you're trying to gather is the energy, if you like, to be able to hold you in that loop, to step out of your comfort zone. And that energy is very much going to be emotional, like heart-based energy, not rational, logical stuff. Because remember, the rational, logical stuff is going to go back to, why are you doing this? Go back to what you've already done, okay? The other thing to note with this model is that in the past, this is a talk fest that changes nothing. So we can sit around, we can talk about the past, we can analyze it, we can talk about who was right, who was wrong, who's to blame, opinions, judgments, stuff like that, but it will change nothing. But this is also a talk fest that changes nothing, okay? Sitting over here in the future, talking about all these grand ideas and things that you're going to do will actually change nothing. And we all know people that always have, you know, great big ideas, but never actually do anything about it. And you go, oh yeah, never going to do anything about it, okay? So the key in this model to recognize is the present is the point of power, okay? So the present is where spirit and matter connect, and that's your opportunity to influence the world, okay? And action here is king. The other thing to note with this model is to understand which way time goes. Now, if I sit with you and I say, if you look at this model, past, present, future, which way does time go? Pretty much all of you are going to say time goes from left to right, because that's the way that you've been trained. With Socratic type philosophy, the way that we are trained, if you like, in the West, if you're standing here in the present moment and you experience some issue, the first thing you're trained to do is go back to the past and say, well, how did this occur? What was the cause of it, et cetera, et cetera. So you're basically looking for the root cause of the problem, so you can come up with a solution that you then project forwards. However, as I pointed out to you, in a changing, uncertain environment, that's not going to work because you can't accurately predict the future. That also, by the way, the past, present, future, that orientation of time, if you like, relates very strongly to destiny, you know, the things are basically predetermined, essentialism, etc. Now, from an existential perspective, time goes the other way around. Time goes from the right to the left. So in other words, if you sit here in the present, the future is coming towards you. And the things that are in the future become the present. And then when you experience the present, then that has become the past, okay? So see how different that is? And when you look at the world from that perspective, you go, wait a minute. If that's the way the world works, if that's the way that I'm creating my reality, there's specific things that you need to be able to do in each of those three realms. So what I'm suggesting to you is that if you want to create something different in your life, what you need to do is shift the balance. So in other words, shift this loop here, past, present, from 90 to 95% to down to more like 2/3 of your time. And remember, the key relationship here is between being and time. And with regard to, I suppose, proactively creating what you want, shift that from 5 to 10% of the time to more like 1/3 of the time. And again, if you're using an electronic calendar, you can go back and you can work out how much of your time you're actually spending doing that. So in other words, future present stuff is basically strategic type thinking. So it's clarifying your vision, clarifying your mission, clarifying your values, enrolling other people in that, answering the why, right? And so you can see that, spend 1/3 of your time deliberately creating what you want to create. Spend 2/3 of the time putting systems and processes in place. So remember that you plant seeds in the future, and then as the future comes towards you, you act in the present. And then after you've acted, it goes to the past, right? And you tell a interpretive story about what's actually happened. Now, remember that what your brain is trying to do in the present moment is trying to pattern match the whole time against the past, subconsciously pattern match. So what we want to do from an existential perspective is we want to train the brain to pattern match against what you want to do. So in other words, things that are aligned to what you want to create rather than the way you've always been. And remembering, of course, as it says there, the action is king. So you can talk about this stuff, as I said to you, blue in the face, but the trick is you need to be able to act. So what you need to do from the perspective of this model is work on your 3 selves, all right? So over here in the future, this is your aspirational being. So this is about dreams and visions. This is about taking the time to work out, what do I actually want? Why do I actually want it from a heart-based perspective, not from a head-based perspective, okay? In the present moment, this is the free being. So this is about choices. But what you need to remember is that most of the time we're operating on autopilot. So this is why in the present moment, you need to do activities like mindfulness, meditation, yoga, etc., to give you the biggest possible opportunity to be as present as possible, so you can seize the opportunity and act on it before your brain has defaulted into pattern matching. And then over here in the past, you've got what's called the constructed being. So this is stories. So as I said, we start off with these intentions. We have actions, or we have experiences in present, and then we tell an interpretive story. And that's the constructed being. So you tell a story about who you are, what's happened in your life, etc. Okay. Now, the trick with this model is that what you want to be able to do is you want to manage existential alignment. Okay. So we want to line these three things up. And remember at the start, we talked about when you have new aspirations, you can have internal conflict between the two aspects of the self. So this part and this part. And basically, if that's what's going on, in other words, if you're beating yourself up, oh, you're such an idiot, blah, 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 you're wasting your energy. You're wasting energy that you should be using or spending, if you like, on creating what you want to create. So existential alignment is basically trying to line up those three things. So line up what you're aspiring to create with how you're actually acting and the story that you're telling about it. So how do we begin with this? Actually, just let me go back a slide. So just to remember that essentially the way that we've been trained, particularly in the West, with existential type philosophy, is that if you're experiencing an issue in the present, the first thing you should do is go backwards. Okay, so backwards, how did this happen? Why did it happen? What are the facts? What's the information? Blah, blah, blah. How do I fix it? From an existential perspective, what you want to do is you want to go forwards. So you're faced with an issue in the present moment. Your first question should be, wait a minute, what is it that I actually want? Okay, why do I actually want it? What's my strategy for creating it? And what are the values that are going to guide me? Okay, so this is a visioning process. And generally in the West, we're crap at visioning. The closest we get to visioning is like in the job interview, you know, when they say to you, so where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Where always the right answer is in your job, right? But actually, you can do visioning from a variety of perspectives. And so what I would suggest to you is to consider these 5 different aspects. So physical, emotional, mental, material, and spiritual. And it's really easy to get a read on how you're going in those 5 different areas. So if you think about physical well-being, so eating well, sleeping well, exercising well, how are you going out of 10? Okay, so put a number on it. A number will jump straight into your head, so just write it down. Emotional well-being, so in terms of being in touch with your emotions, expressing them in a healthy way, forming good relationships with people, how are you going out of 10? Write it down. And again, like, use your intuition, allow your intuition to inform you. Don't try and rationalize the answer, just write down the first number that pops into your head. Mental, so in terms of being sharp, on the ball, up to speed with the latest things, how are you going out of 10? Write it down. And then material, are you happy with the things that you have in your life? So again, write it down, out of 10. And then the last one is spiritual. So spiritual means different things to different people, but essentially it's a connection with the unseen aspects of life. Okay, so whether it be walking the dog, watching sunsets, all the way through to prayer and meditation. So again, what's your number out of 10? Write it down. Now, hopefully you've all got written down your number now. So let's just go back to this one, okay? Now, we didn't do a tricky psychometric test, stick an fMRI machine on your head, anything like that. All we said is, how do you reckon you're going, right? So what you're doing is you're picking up on the relationship between the 2 aspects of the self. So this part of yourself here and this part of yourself here, okay? And basically, it gives you an indication of the quality of your internal dialogue. So for example, if you rated yourself, say 5 out of 10 on physical, then this aspect of the self is saying to that aspect of the self, you know what? 5 out of 10, you're barely passing, you need to get your shit together, okay? If you're 3 out of 10, obviously, basically you're beating yourself up. Now, again, if you're doing that, you're wasting energy, right? So that's interesting that you can rate yourself as 5 out of 10 or 3 out of 10 or whatever. But the more interesting aspect is that if some part of you can rate yourself 5 out of 10, the same part of yourself knows what 10 out of 10 looks like. So that's what we want to drill into. So with this process, your first question is, okay, so this is take a bit of a deep breath, okay? And then say, what does 10 out of 10 look like and feel like? Because remember what we're trying to do is trying to tap into the emotional body and tap into that why question. And out of that, what you should seek for all of those areas is a being statement that captures emotion, okay? So a being statement that captures emotion, all right? When you've got that, we know that if all it does is stay over in the future, so remember in the future is the going to conversation, nothing's going to happen. So then what you need to do is you need to cross the bridge from the future into the present, in other words, from theory into reality. And the way you do that is by asking this question. So what would you need to habitually do to be like that? Okay, so note this isn't about fixing your problems, anything like that. This is about saying, all right, so we're looking at a system here and creating what we want to create. What are all the little things that you need to do habitually to be like that? And then what will drop out of that is a weekly routine. And then remember from this model, the key task, your key task is to try and line those 3 things up, right, and basically drive your model. The other thing that will drive this, if there's only one thing that you take out of this, what I would suggest to you is to do daily practice, okay? So hopefully you can see from that past, present, future model that if you think in a linear way, so if you think in straight lines and try and project things forwards, you're going to have trouble in a changing environment. In uncertainty, what you want to do is embed these circular feedback loops. So we want to start working in circles rather than straight lines, right? So you've already got the weekly routine. So the weekly routine is the week, obviously the week, right? Daily routine is a day. So we want to create a daily practice. And daily practice just has 3 elements. So the first thing is in the morning, you want to set intention. So ideally what you do is wake up in the morning, take a little deep breath to present yourself, and then ask the question, how do I want to be today? Simple, right? Set your intention. So we're trying to act proactively, and we're trying to negate or stop ourselves from being reactive, okay? During the day, and so we know during, you can start the day with great intentions, and then, you basically get caught up in things, you go off track. So somewhere in the middle of the day, what you want to do is like check in. So we want to see, am I actually on track? Now, if you're off track, don't start beating yourself up, because again, then you're creating internal conflict and you're wasting energy. What you want to ask is, what you want to do is just acknowledge, okay, acknowledge I'm off track, right? And you want to redirect, so gently redirect. So it's like the Buddhist process, gently redirect. What was my intention again? Oh yeah, that's what it was. Okay, redirect, okay? At the end of the day, 2 key questions. So see how we're bookending here? So we're setting our intention, come back around, end of the day, you want to bookend. I'm going to ask these 2 questions, right? So the first question is, what did I do right today? And the reason you want to ask that is because the way the brain is hardwired is that we go straight into what went wrong today and how can I fix it? So we've all experienced those really busy days where you run around, done things flat out, you get home, maybe you have dinner with friends, family, whatever. You fall into bed exhausted and you can't go to sleep, because as soon as you lie down, your brain starts going back through all the events of the day and trying to think, well, if I'd done that instead of doing that, then maybe this would have happened, I could have fixed that. You're trying to fix it, right? The problem with that is that we know from the neurocognitive science, so this is neuroplasticity, we know that the brain is always making new neural connections. The problem is we only have a certain capacity. So what happens when you sleep is you go through a process called synaptic pruning. So you're basically chopping away the things you aren't using, okay? Guess what you get to keep? The things that you're paying most attention to. So if you're paying most attention to what went wrong, that's what you get to keep, right? And then remember, from an existential perspective, that experience then goes into the past and you tell a negative story about it and you basically start spiraling downwards, right? And what we're trying to do from a walk a sacred path perspective is basically walk a path of ascension. So we want to go upwards like this, okay? That's why you want to ask that question of what did I do right today? So you want to basically hack the brain, if you like, and get you to focus on the good stuff. The second question you need to ask is, what am I grateful for? And the reason you want to ask that is because we know from the happiness research that all of us go up and down in a band, right? For some of us, the band is up here, right? For some of us, the band is down there. We know from the happiness research that if all you do for the next 3 to 6 months is you write down 3 things you're grateful for, you bump your band up by about 15%, okay? So that's why we want to ask, what am I grateful for? And again, what you're focusing on expands, okay? So that's daily practice. The last bit in this presentation is remember that fixed thinking is the enemy of change. So every time you start thinking, okay, I know what the answer is, this is the way it's going to be, blah, 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 blah. Basically, you lock yourself down into rational, logical thinking and you inhibit your ability to change. So one of the key things that you need to be able to do is to experiment and play. So one of the key questions to be able to ask in all of this is, I wonder what would happen if I did this, right? And then run an experiment. So we want to run an experiment. So I want to set up a circular feedback loop. So remembering that from this perspective, or I would say in life, the 2 superpowers, curiosity and gratitude. The poisons, cynicism and sarcasm, okay? So cynicism will diminish your capacity to have faith, so faith that something else is possible. And as you can see with that past, present, future model, it will inhibit your ability to step over into the future. Sarcasm will diminish your relationship with truth. So it will diminish your capacity to trust yourself and trust others, right? I would always say to you, orientate towards curiosity and gratitude. Curiosity and gratitude, try and pivot the whole way. All right, so that's pretty much the end of this little introductory talk on existentialism. I would hope that you enjoyed it, and I'd encourage you to have a look at either the Facebook page, LinkedIn page, and on Thinkific. We're in the process of uploading other courses to be able to work through this sort of stuff. And of course, like, feel free to contact me. Thank you very much. And I think on this page, one last thing. Remember that you're not as smart as you think you are. And there's some contact things for the Sacred Path Group. Thank you very much, and bye for now.